Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith. We're talking about the economy and investing, and I like to try to delve into a topic or two that has a direct bearing on investing. Something that we have yet to discuss on this program are dividends and stocks that pay dividends. So, Kim, don't all stocks pay dividends?
No. They used to, way back in the Stone Age, right after stocks were made. I'm kidding. No. Actually, it was the technology craze in the mid-90s that the dot-com bubble, for those of you watching at home, maybe have lived through that. That made companies that did not pay dividends a thing. And now I think people just don't really think all that hard about it. But that used to be the way to value a stock, was how much you were getting from it, and then how much they were going to increase it over time. So that was called the dividend discount model. Well, I personally, even though I come from the world of tech, I love dividends. I call it getting paid for owning stocks. And I don't poo-poo them at all, but you have to know if they're reasonable or not. And maybe somebody else can pick up that torch. But basically, the money that's coming out of the business going to you in dividends can't further the growth of the company. And it can also not be used for stupid things either. So sometimes that's good too. So by and large, I think it's good to see if a company has dividends and why they're sending them out, if it's lack of growth or some other reason, and then you make your decision based on that.
As one of those old-fashioned kind of guys, I always like dividends, and other than in real hot markets like maybe the one we're having this year, although I don't think anybody's crunched these numbers, people have said that 50% of the return in equities is dividends in quality portfolios. The trading games type playing of the market that other TV shows promote, that is not dividend oriented. That's what can I buy this morning and sell this afternoon at a profit. First of all, my stomach couldn't handle that. Second of all, I used to try to do that, and it really turned out poorly. It's no different than, as far as I'm concerned, you might as well buy a lottery ticket, it'll end faster. Yeah. And I think that dividends are important, especially for the people who are at or nearing retirement. If they're collecting a dividend that supports their standard of living, or dividends in general, that supports their standard of living, they're not eating, as you might say, the seed corn, their principal. They're just taking some of the profits from the investments they own and using that to live on.
Michael, Carrie, either one of you want to jump in here?
Go ahead, Michael.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with what Kim said in many instances there. We get to take a look at whether a company is growing enough to pay the dividends. Take a look at Google and NVIDIA, two very, very high profile growing companies that don't pay a dividend really. You want them to continue to plow their cash back into the business because that's what's going to generate long-term, hopefully growth rate over time. What I'll say is if you invest in dividend paying stocks, for the most part, we think it's very important to continue to reinvest those dividends back into the stock as opposed to having them pay out the cash. Unless, like Frank said, you are relying on those dividends for your living measures or means. But if you're still young and you're still employed, continue to plow those dividends back into the stock or that ETF or the stock market, because over time, the compounding effect of those dividends really adds up from a return standpoint.
Carrie?
Well, we like to own both, and whether we own more dividend payers versus growth really depends on what the economy is doing. It's what signifies a growth stock versus a value stock. And there are periods of time where each perform and each makes sense. When it comes to dividend paying stocks, one of the things that we pay the most attention to is the payout ratio. How much free cash flow does a company have to be able to pay out their dividend versus paying out too much in dividends? So depending on risk tolerance, again, and what the economy is doing, we'll make decisions about when to own them and how much.
All right, I'll ask this last question. We have about exactly 1 minute to go here, and that is, if the corporation pays a higher dividend, is it less likely to have that stock price grow through the years? Or is there any
Depends on the
connection to
industry, Stacy, and it depends on what you mean by higher. All right. I've had clients who go put their finger down the page at the dividend and they find the biggest number they can find and they want to buy that stock. It 99% of the time is a mistake to do that. You're probably better off buying a 2 or 3% dividend today because that company is paying out probably paying out a reasonable percentage of their earnings and retaining a reasonable percentage for future growth.
A lot of the time, Stacy, sorry, real quick, the dividend amount stays pretty much kind of the same, but the price of the stock has dropped so much that the yield you get, dividend price divided by the stock price, looks really big, like 11%. And the reason why is because the stock has dropped so significantly, and that could be a red flag.
Okay, got it. We are out of time. I want to thank all of you once again for joining me. And I also want to thank you for joining us for Around the Table with Stacy Smith. And we hope to see you the next time.